Monday mornings always smelled like burnt coffee and stale ambition. For Maya Johnson, it was a smell she usually associated with victory. The AP calculus test she'd crammed for over the weekend felt like a solid A. Her coding project, a self-navigating robot for the school's science fair, was humming along nicely. She'd even managed to snag the last blueberry muffin from the cafeteria, a small win that fueled her competitive spirit. She strode into the computer lab, the rhythmic tapping of her boots against the linoleum a steady beat in the otherwise silent hallway. She liked arriving early. It gave her a chance to review her code and avoid the usual pre-class chatter. But the lab wasn't silent. A low hum of panicked voices filled the air. Students clustered around empty desks, their faces etched with confusion and disbelief. Ms. Eleanor Evans, her usually composed face creased with worry, stood near the whiteboard, a red marker clutched in her hand. "What's going on?" Maya asked, her voice cutting through the murmurs. David Chen, his brow furrowed, turned to her. "The laptops, they're gone." Maya frowned. "Gone? Like, someone borrowed them?" "No," Maria Rodriguez chimed in, her voice trembling slightly. Gone. Stolen. All 5 of them." A wave of disbelief washed over Maya. 5 brand new, top-of-the-line laptops, the kind the school had bragged about for months, just vanished over the weekend? The lab was locked every night, secured with a digital keypad and monitored by security cameras. Ms. Evans cleared her throat, drawing the students' attention. "All right, everyone, please settle down. I've already notified Mr. Henderson. Security is reviewing the footage now. In the meantime, please remain in the lab." The students exchanged uneasy glances. The air thickened with unspoken accusations. Maya felt a prickle of unease. She was one of the few students with near unfettered access to the lab, thanks to her work on the robotics project. And she was the only black student in the advanced computer science class. A cold knot formed in her stomach. Mr. Henderson, the principal, bustled into the lab, his face grim. 2 security guards followed close behind, their presence adding to the tension. He surveyed the room, his gaze lingering for a moment on Maya. "All right, students," he announced, his voice tight. "This is a serious matter. We need to cooperate fully with the investigation. Anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, should come forward immediately." He paused, his eyes scanning the room again. "Ms. Evans, could I have a word with you in the hallway?" As Ms. Evans followed Mr. Henderson out of the lab, Maya noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The whispers grew louder, the glances more pointed. She could almost feel the weight of suspicion settling upon her shoulders. The burnt coffee smell, which usually energized her, now felt acrid and suffocating. The muffin suddenly tasted like sawdust. This Monday morning, once a symbol of potential, had become something far more sinister. The shadow of suspicion, the summons had been delivered during 5th period. A slip of paper, clammy from passing through too many hands, ordering Maya to Principal Thompson's office. Her stomach churned, a lead weight sinking with each step she took down the silent hallway. The air conditioning hummed, usually a comforting drone, now a menacing whisper. Thompson sat behind his enormous oak desk, the polished surface reflecting the fluorescent lights in a harsh, unforgiving glare. He didn't look up when she entered. "Sit, Maya." His voice was flat, devoid of any warmth. He shuffled papers, avoiding eye contact. "We've had an incident." Maya perched on the edge of the offered chair, her palms sweating. "An incident, sir? 5 laptops are missing from the computer lab." He finally looked up, his gaze lingering on her just a moment too long. "You were working there late yesterday, weren't you?" "Yes, sir. I always do. I have to finish my coding project." Maya's voice was barely a whisper. She felt a prickle of unease crawl up her spine. "And no one else was present?" He raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. Just Mr. Abernathy, the lab monitor, but he left around 5:30. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. So, you were alone in a room with 5 unlocked laptops for several hours. It wasn't a question. She swallowed hard. Yes, sir. But I didn't take anything. The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. We'll see about that, Maya. He dismissed her with a curt nod. You're free to go. The hallway was a gauntlet. Eyes followed her, whispers snaking through the crowd like venomous vines. She could feel the heat of their stares burning into her back. The cafeteria was worse. The clatter of trays and the boisterous chatter seemed to stop abruptly as she walked in. A group near the window stared openly, one girl cupping her hand and whispering. To another, Maya averted her gaze, grabbing a carton of juice and a dry-looking sandwich. She found a table in the far corner, as far away from the judging eyes as possible. Even the stale air felt cleaner there. She picked at her food, the knot in her stomach tightening with each passing minute. A crumpled piece of paper landed on her tray. Unfolding it with trembling fingers, she saw a single word scrawled in messy handwriting, thief. Tears welled in her eyes. She crumpled the note, her appetite gone. The cafeteria noise seemed to intensify, the laughter and conversations now laced with a sharp, mocking edge. She felt a hand on her shoulder and flinched. It was Sarah, her lab partner. Maya, I heard. Sarah's voice was hesitant, her eyes darting around nervously. Look, I know you wouldn't do something like that, but... She trailed off, her words hanging in the air. Maya looked up at her, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. But what, Sarah? Sarah's gaze dropped to the floor. But, people are talking. Principal Thompson. He seems pretty sure it was you. She squeezed Maya's shoulder briefly, then hurried away, disappearing into the throng of students. The hope flickered and died. Maya was alone, accused, and judged. The shadow of suspicion had fallen, and it was cold and dark. She threw her lunch in the trash and fled the cafeteria, the whispers chasing her down the hall. A teacher's unease, the fluorescent lights of the faculty lounge hummed, a monotonous drone that amplified Eleanor's unease. She stirred her lukewarm tea, the ceramic mug warming her hands but doing little to soothe the knot in her stomach. Through the doorway, she could see Maya Johnson being escorted by Mr. Abernathy towards Principal Thompson's office. Maya's shoulders were slumped, her usual vibrant spirit dimmed to a flicker. Eleanor had seen that defeated posture before, mirrored in the eyes of students worn down by unfair accusations. Principal Thompson's office door clicked shut. Eleanor winced. She'd witnessed Thompson's methods before. Subtle coercion masked as concern, leading questions designed to trap, not to understand. He favored intimidation over empathy. A coldness radiated from him, a calculated detachment that made Eleanor deeply uncomfortable. She recalled his quick dismissal of Maya's scholarship application last year, citing lack of extracurricular involvement. Despite Maya working part-time to support her family, Eleanor had personally written a letter of recommendation, highlighting Maya's academic excellence and resilience. But Thompson had remained unmoved. The bell signaling the end of lunch jolted her from her thoughts. Students flooded the hallway, their chatter a stark contrast to the heavy silence surrounding Principal Thompson's office. Eleanor watched as Mrs. Davies, the school secretary, emerged, her face tight. She avoided Eleanor's gaze, disappearing into the records room. That was it. Eleanor couldn't stand by any longer. She finished her tea, the bitter taste lingering on her tongue. The official investigation would be a sham, she knew. Thompson had already made up his mind. He'd find a way to pin it on Maya, regardless of the truth. The thought ignited a spark of defiance within her. Leaving her mug on the counter, Eleanor headed towards the library. Mrs. Green, the librarian, greeted her with a warm smile. "Eleanor, lovely to see you. Researching something?" Just catching up on some overdue periodicals, Eleanor replied, offering a weak smile. She felt a pang of guilt for deceiving Mrs. Green, but the need to act outweighed her discomfort. She knew the library's security cameras covered a blind spot near the back entrance of the school, a potential escape route for anyone trying to sneak in or out unnoticed. "Let me know if you need anything," Mrs. Green said, returning to her work. Eleanor walked to the back of the library and quietly slipped into the small room where the security system's hard drives were stored. The hum of the machines filled the cramped space. She located the footage from yesterday afternoon, her fingers trembling slightly as she manipulated the controls. She had to be quick, precise. She only had a limited amount of time before someone noticed her absence. As she began to fast forward through the hours of blurry images, a cold determination settled within her. She would find something, anything that could help Maya. She had to. Seeking the truth, Ms. Evans smoothed the wrinkles from her skirt, the crisp cotton doing little to calm the churning in her stomach. The fluorescent lights of the main office hummed, casting a sickly yellow glow on the polished linoleum floor. She'd spent the morning crafting a formal request, outlining the necessity of reviewing the security footage from the past week. 5 laptops vanishing without a trace. It was unprecedented, and the whispers swirling through the faculty lounge were growing louder, more pointed. Principal Thompson sat behind his imposing mahogany desk, its surface meticulously clear save for a framed photograph of his grinning family and a pen stand shaped like a miniature schoolhouse. He steepled his fingers, a habit she knew signaled disapproval. "Eleanor, I appreciate your thoroughness, but I'm not sure what you expect to find on the security cameras. The school is a secure environment." With all due respect, Principal Thompson, 5 laptops disappearing suggests otherwise. Reviewing the footage is standard procedure in any investigation. Her voice was steady, despite the nervous tremor in her hands. She placed the request on his desk. The paper made a soft, papery thwack that echoed in the otherwise quiet room. He picked it up, scanned it quickly, and then sighed, a drawn-out exhale that seemed designed to convey his immense burden. "Eleanor, the system is complex. Retrieving and reviewing that much footage is time-consuming. Resources are stretched thin as it is. I understand that, sir, but the value of potential evidence outweighs the inconvenience. Someone accessed those classrooms. Someone took those laptops. The cameras might offer a lead. Even the smallest clue could be crucial." She kept her gaze fixed on his, refusing to be intimidated by his towering presence or his carefully constructed air of authority. She could practically taste the metallic tang of fear in the air, and it wasn't hers. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking in protest. "And what if the cameras show nothing? We would have wasted valuable time and resources." His eyes flickered to the window overlooking the parking lot, then back to her. "Then we've eliminated a possibility," she countered, her voice softening slightly. "But if we don't look, we're letting a thief walk free, and we're failing our students." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Furthermore, sir, I am willing to personally dedicate the time to review the footage. I can work after school hours. I only need access." A muscle twitched in his jaw. He drummed his fingers on the desk. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the hum of the lights. Finally, he relented, his voice tight. "I will have Mr. Davies, our IT technician, contact you to arrange a time to access the server, but I expect a full report of your findings." "Thank you, Principal Thompson." She offered a small, tight smile, relieved but far from reassured. His reluctance, his flimsy excuses, had only solidified her suspicions. He wasn't just being difficult. He was actively obstructing the investigation, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. The unveiling the hum of the security room's server racks was almost a physical presence, a constant vibration against Ms. Evans's skin. She'd been at it for hours, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a gnawing anxiety that wouldn't let her go. Each rewind and replay of the grainy footage felt like another layer of doubt chipping away at her faith in the system, in her school. The theft had occurred during the brief window between the last class and dismissal. Maya, with her scholarship on the line, had been the immediate suspect. Evans refused to believe it. She fast-forwarded, the blurred figures of students rushing to buses, a chaotic ballet. Then, rewinding, she slowed the playback, focusing on the corridor outside the computer lab. A group of figures huddled near the door, indistinct in the dim light. Upperclassmen. She recognized the distinctive swagger of Jake Billings and the nervous fidgeting of Sarah Chun. What were they doing? Evans zoomed in, the image pixelating slightly but still clear enough. Billings pulled a tool from his bag, a Slim Jim, she realized with a jolt of recognition, and slipped it between the door and the frame. Chun acted as lookout, her head swiveling nervously. Took them less than a minute. Billings popped the lock, and they were inside. A few minutes later, they emerged, each carrying a padded laptop bag. Their faces were obscured by hoodies, but the gait, the build, it was undeniably them. They melted into the throng of students heading towards the buses. Evans felt a wave of nausea followed by a surge of relief so potent it almost buckled her knees. Maya was innocent, but the relief was quickly overshadowed by a simmering anger. Billings and Chun popular, privileged, untouchable. Would they have even been questioned if Maya hadn't been an easy target? She replayed the footage, capturing screenshots of the crucial moments. Her hands trembled as she saved the files, labeled meticulously. This wasn't just about clearing Maya's name. It was about exposing the ingrained biases that allowed this to happen in the first place. The fluorescent lights of the security room seemed to buzz with a newfound intensity, illuminating the path ahead. The fight was far from over. Evidence presented. Ms. Evans laid the tablet on Principal Thompson's mahogany desk, the polished surface, reflecting the fluorescent lights in a sterile glare. "I think you need to see this, Principal Thompson." He leaned back in his leather chair, its springs creaking in protest. He steepled his fingers, his expression a mask of professional concern. "Eleanor, I appreciate your dedication, but I assure you, the matter is being handled appropriately." She tapped the screen, the video already cued. "Appropriately? Principal, look." The grainy footage flickered to life. It showed the hallway outside the computer lab, the timestamp clear in the corner. A figure, unmistakably Kevin Abernathy, the star quarterback, emerged from the lab, burdened with a large duffel bag. He glanced around nervously before hurrying towards the emergency exit. Thompson's face paled, the carefully cultivated tan seeming to leach away. He swallowed hard. "Well, this needs context. There could be any number of explanations." He reached for his glasses, perched precariously on his nose, and began cleaning them with a silk handkerchief. Context? He's carrying a duffel bag full of school property out of an emergency exit at 10 o'clock at night. What context could possibly excuse that? Ms. Evans' voice rose slightly, the controlled calm she'd cultivated fraying at the edges. Perhaps he was retrieving something for a teacher? A project? Thompson offered weakly, his eyes darting away from the screen. The air in the office grew thick with the stench of denial. Ms. Evans shook her head, disbelief warring with a simmering anger. "Principal, we both know that's absurd. He was stealing the laptops. And because of that assumption, Maya Peterson has been ostracized, interrogated, and treated like a criminal." The word criminal tasted bitter on her tongue. He sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. "Eleanor, you understand the optics. We have to be careful. Abernathy's family is influential. This could cause a great deal of friction." "Friction," Ms. Evans repeated, incredulous. "Maya Peterson's future is at stake here. This isn't about avoiding friction. It's about doing what's right. We need to call the police." and Maya deserves a full and public apology." Thompson ran a hand through his thinning hair. The mahogany desk suddenly seemed like a cage. "A public apology? That's drastic. Let's not be hasty. Perhaps a private conversation with the Abernethys?" "No," Ms. Evans said, her voice firm, resolute. "No more private conversations. No more backroom deals. Maya deserves to have her name cleared in front of the entire school. She deserves to know that this institution, this place that is supposed to protect her, actually has her back." She retrieved the tablet, the screen now dark. "If you're not willing to do that, Principal Thompson, then I don't think I can work here anymore." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, amplifying the silence that followed. A hollow apology. The drab walls of Principal Thompson's office felt like they were pressing in on Maya, suffocating her. Her mother, a statue of rigid disapproval, sat beside her, her silence a more potent indictment than any screaming match. Across the expanse of polished mahogany, Principal Thompson cleared his throat, a theatrical gesture that did nothing to calm the frantic drumming in Maya's chest. Beside him, Mrs. Davies' lips were a tight seam, a notepad clutched in her hand, poised to record Maya's every misstep. "Maya," Principal Thompson rumbled, his voice carefully modulated, "we understand the inquiry caused you some discomfort." His gaze darted momentarily toward Mrs. Davies, who offered a curt nod. "And for that, we extend our apologies." The words rang false, a hollow performance. Maya's mother shifted, the subtle swish of her skirt the only sound in the room. Apologies? For what, precisely? For presuming guilt? For the ingrained bias that had branded her daughter a delinquent before any facts were established? At Northwood, we pride ourselves on fostering an inclusive atmosphere, Mrs. Davies chirped, her tones sickeningly sweet. "We regret any perception to the contrary." Maya met their gazes, her anger a low, simmering fire beneath a facade of composure. "So, that's it?" she finally managed, her voice a thread. "A casual my bad? What about the whispers that followed me like a shadow? The accusatory looks? The presumption of criminality?" The muscles in Principal Thompson's jaw tightened. "Maya, we are actively working to remedy the situation. A statement will be issued to the student body, underscoring our commitment to diversity and inclusion." "A statement?" Maya scoffed, a bitter taste coating her tongue. "That won't undo the damage." Finally, her mother's voice, sharp as shattered glass, sliced through the saccharine platitudes. "This goes far beyond a simple lapse in judgment, Principal Thompson. This is about the systemic prejudice my daughter confronts daily. It's about the double standard she's held to, the constant need to overachieve just to be seen as equal. Your apology is a meaningless gesture." The meeting dissolved shortly after, leaving a residue of dissatisfaction and unease. Emerging into the hallway, Maya was engulfed by a wave of exhaustion. The supposed bomb had only aggravated the sting. Upstairs, in the faculty lounge, Ms. Evans stared out at the manicured lawns of Northwood, the scene blurring behind a film of unshed tears. News of the administration's carefully worded mea culpa had spread, carried on the same insidious currents that had initially condemned Maya. She crumpled the starched paper of her resignation letter in her fist. Simply unearthing the footage, clearing Maya's name, wasn't sufficient. The problem ran deeper, a festering sore of prejudice and complacency she could no longer stomach. How could she, in good conscience, remain in a place where a student's integrity was judged not by evidence, but by skin tone? The letter felt fragile, a futile act of defiance against an immovable institution. But it was all she had. Smoothing the wrinkled page, she walked to the principal's office and slipped it beneath the door. A letter heard around the world, the clatter of the keyboard was a frantic percussion against the oppressive silence of Ms. Evans' apartment. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious. Inside, Eleanor typed, deleted, retyped, each word a tiny act of rebellion. The letter had to be perfect, a scalpel, not a bludgeon. She wasn't interested in being a martyr, just in making sure Maya didn't become one. She'd visited Maya during lunch. The girl sat alone, picking at a wilted salad. Her eyes were shadowed, her spirit dimmed. Principal Thompson had kept her in his office for over an hour this morning, demanding answers she didn't have. Eleanor could practically taste the defeat radiating from Maya, a sour, metallic tang. They were wearing her down. Finally, the letter was done. Crisp, concise, and damning. She addressed it to the school board, blind copied the local newspaper, and hit send. A wave of nausea washed over her, followed by a strange, liberating calm. That evening, Eleanor baked a casserole, something comforting and familiar. She was halfway through grating cheese when her phone buzzed incessantly. Unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, curiosity, and a sliver of dread, overwhelmed her. Hello? Silence. Then, a choked sob. Ms. Evans? It's everywhere. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Before she could ask who was speaking, a link pinged into the text thread. She tapped it. There it was, her letter, plastered across a news website under a screaming headline. Teacher resigns in protest of racial bias at Northwood High. The comments section was a wildfire. Outrage, support, accusations, a torrent of unfiltered emotion. Within hours, the story had exploded. Twitter was ablaze with hashtag Justice for Maya and hashtag Evans resigns. The local news picked it up, then national outlets. Celebrities retweeted the letter, adding their voices to the chorus. The phone calls started too. Reporters, activists, parents. Her inbox overflowed. Eleanor felt a strange detachment, watching the world react to her words. It was exhilarating and terrifying. She scrolled through images of protesters gathering outside the school, holding signs emblazoned with Maya's face. Someone had even projected the text of her letter onto the side of the administration building. She found Maya's number and dialed. It rang and rang, going to voicemail. Maya, it's me. Please call me when you can. We're going to get through this. Later, watching the news, Eleanor saw Principal Thompson giving a carefully worded statement, his face pale under the studio lights. He promised a full investigation. He condemned racism. He said the school valued all its students. Eleanor switched off the television. The air in her apartment felt thick with the weight of expectation. The casserole sat cooling on the counter. She hadn't taken a bite. This was just the beginning. Justice Prevails. The chill in Principal Thompson's office went beyond the building's aging HVAC system. It was the glacial atmosphere of prejudgment that settled around Maya like a shroud. Perched precariously on the edge of the hard chair, she clutched her backpack, her grip a silent scream. Maya, Thompson began, his tone a calibrated mix of sympathy and veiled accusation. The surveillance, it paints a concerning picture. Concerning? A dismissive euphemism for guilt. Her gaze remained fixed on the office carpet, its dizzying pattern mirroring her own turmoil as tears threatened to spill. She'd glimpsed the incriminating images. A shadowy figure, her height, near the forbidden computer lab. Enough, it seemed, to convict her in their biased court. A surge of defiance threatened to erupt, to shatter the carefully polished veneer of a school that touted fairness while practicing prejudice. But exhaustion held her captive. The summons, another interruption during physics, had been the final straw. Whispers, sharpened like daggers, had resumed their relentless assault. The crushing weight of their assumptions pressed down, stealing her breath. I didn't do it, she managed, the words barely audible. Thompson's sigh was a gust of disbelief. I want to believe you, truly. The sudden shrill of his phone sliced through the heavy air. He listened, his face losing color with each passing second. Replacing the receiver, his professional mask crumbled. That was the superintendent. Emergency school board meeting. Prepare yourself. He offered no explanation, but his altered manner spoke volumes, signaling a seismic shift in their certainty. The following day, an electric current crackled through the school auditorium. A phalanx of news cameras lined the rear, their lenses gleaming like predatory eyes. The school board members sat rigidly on the dais, their expressions somber. Superintendent Evans approached the podium. Her voice, magnified by the microphone, reverberated through the hall. Yesterday, a grievous wrong was committed within these walls, a wrong that we, as a governing body, deeply lament. She paused, her gaze encompassing the assembled crowd. We extend our sincerest apologies to Maya Johnson for the unwarranted suspicion and anguish she has suffered. A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Dr. Evans continued, her tone resolute. A comprehensive inquiry has revealed entrenched biases within our disciplinary framework. We pledge to dismantle these prejudices and cultivate a truly just and equitable learning environment for all students. She detailed the immediate steps being taken: mandatory sensitivity training for all staff members, a reassessment of security measures, and the formation of a student advisory council to address discrimination. As Dr. Evans spoke, a sensation akin to lightness bloomed within Maya, pushing back the lingering shadows of doubt and pain. It was more than just an apology. It was an admission, a commitment to transformation. The battle was far from won, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, a spark of hope ignited within her. This wasn't solely about her experience anymore. It encompassed every student unjustly judged, every voice suppressed. She would persevere in her studies. She would graduate, and she would fight, with unwavering resolve, for a future where justice prevailed, not just in word, but in deed.